Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm a twin mum to 6-year-old identical twin girls, and this is my crazy journey. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up below and click subscribe. It helps me make content that helps you. Let's get started. Here are my top 10 tips for being a twin mum. Tip number 1, do your research. I found YouTube videos really helpful. There's an excellent book, and I'll link it below, by Natalie Diaz from Twiniversity. It's called What to Do When Expecting To. That was the best book or resource I came across, but I found YouTube very useful. Facebook groups. Some countries have like twin associations or charities, things like that will help you, but just do your research. Get all the information you need, and then you can start making your own decisions, but you're making informed decisions, and that was really helpful for me. So my first tip, research. Tip number 2, childbirth. Be flexible. For me, I really wanted a nice water birth, but the moment I found out I was having twins, that went out the window very, very quickly. I kind of always really wanted a natural birth. That ended up not happening. I ended up having a section. Being flexible, understand the different types of childbirth and how things can happen, relaxing your own body and understanding that really helps you have a healthier pregnancy. And I was very fortunate because the girls shared a placenta. I saw a specialist, a consultant every 2 weeks under the NHS because I'm based in the UK. So using what the experts have given you, advice have given you, and kind of taking yourself time to understand that, but also things can change very, very quickly with twin births and having twins. So just being very understanding of that, and yeah, being very flexible is my advice for childbirth. Tip number 3, schedule. Now, in the UK, very much there's a lot of talk and information given about on-demand feeding and everything else. Now, that is great if you have one baby. When you have 2, whose demand are we looking at? Your first, your second child, your own? And I used, and this is also what the sort of paediatric consultants told us to do, and obviously it was different for every child, so obviously take advice from any doctor, but we fed the girls every 3 hours around the clock from 0 to 3 months, and then at 4 months it was every 4 hours, but I kept to a schedule. And in fact, they were easier sleepers when they were babies than they were when they were 3 and 4 years old. So for me, it was very, very important to do that. So I recommend you get them on a schedule. Whatever schedule suits you and whatever schedule you're advised to by your doctor or consultant is very, very important, and taking on that advice. But it just meant everything was so much easier. Everyone kind of knew what was going on. I think we fed 3, 9, 6, 12 for the age 3 to 0 to 3 months, and then it was 4, 7, 11 when they were a bit older. If this is something you want more interested on, how I fed them, their schedules and stuff in those ages, I'm more happy to do a video. Leave a comment below and I will add that in. But tip number 3, get them on a schedule. Tip number 4 leads on from that, and that's feeding. There are lots of different ways, and particularly with newborns, of feeding. You can try breastfeeding, you can express, you can bottle feed, you can do combinations of those things. Again, it's about finding what's right for you. What was right for me was to express. So I expressed milk and looked a bit like a mixture between Madonna and a cow being milking cow. So what I did there was I would express milk while I was feeding them. So it would take about 20 minutes to feed them. And whilst I was feeding them, I'd have the express machine thing on me, getting the next kind of feed through. That helped me. It was really good for multiple reasons for me. The girls' latch wasn't great, so it was really difficult to get into latch. Also meant that my husband could look after them and could feed them as well. A lot of time when you're breastfeeding, you're wanting to give them breast milk, it means that the other partner can't do as much, and that meant that he could do some of the night feeds, which meant I could sleep more. So that was really helpful as well. For me, that's the right thing. And we added in bottle feeds, and we counted about 4 months old, they were doing like 1 bottle feed, as in bottle milk rather than breast milk expressed. From about 4 months old, and that kind of gradually weaned off And so by 6 months, I wasn't breastfeeding them. But again, it's finding what's right for you. You might find breastfeeding the best way. It might not work for you at all. You want to just go straight to bottle feeding and formula. Absolutely fine. It's right for you and what's right for you and right for the babies. And you will know that. That's tip number 4. Feeding. Tip number 5, get used to the comments. I don't know how many times I've had, are they twins? Are they identical? Were they natural? I still to this day haven't quite had the courage to turn around and be like, no, they're triplets. I leave the ugly one at home. But I've never had the confidence to say that to anybody. My girls are quite outdoorsy. People give me side eye and like tutty comments because my children are running around in muddy puddles, swamp, and like a swamp monster. But kind of just being aware of yourself is particularly hard. I find this very hard as a natural born people pleaser and also someone sleep deprived. So just something to be aware of, that you're going to get comments. To however you need to handle it, but just something to be aware of, that you're going to get comments from people who aren't really necessarily thinking about what's going on. So tip number 5, get used to the comments. Tip number 6, chronological age versus corrected age. If you have twins, it's very likely they're going to be born early. In the UK, twins that share a placenta, they are born no later normally than 36 weeks due to the risk of stillbirth and also complications for mum, like preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. All these things are much, much higher after 36 weeks. So I always knew that the girls were going to be born by 36 weeks. And I was in fact told to expect them from 24 weeks onwards. But because of that, it means they're about a month early. So their adjusted age kind of takes into account. So when they're 6 months old, they're actually only 5 months. With the girls, there wasn't very many delays in terms of development pre-2, and that's where the majority of them, if they're going to show, do show. I had more issue when the girls were about 4 and we were like 4 or 5 and they're looking to put them into school, and actually their social skills and their listening skills weren't at sort of age that they would have been, had they been on full term. And that was something I wasn't prepared for or wasn't aware of, but actually it does have an effect, and even at that sort of age, so we delayed them starting school a year. But yeah, so just being aware that chronological age and corrected age are different, and to take that into consideration when you're looking at things, or my baby not doing what this baby is doing, that all children grow and develop in their own time, and it is very easy to compare, but you don't need to. And if they are premature, there is an added factor onto their development, and to be aware of that. So tip number 6, chronological age versus corrected age. Tip number 7, get walking. I love to walk even now, but when the girls were little, it meant that I got out the house, they got exploring, you're exposing them to new environments, getting fresh air into everyone's lungs. At the time I had 2 dogs. I have 1 dog just now. I had 2 dogs at the time, and it meant I could walk all of them, and it was a really good way of getting out the house. And you could then talk to the children, even as babies, about what you were seeing. And as they got a bit older, that was really helpful for their own development, understanding of the world as well. But just a great way of getting active also as well. Post-pregnancy, baby weight, all those sorts of things, walking is a really good way of helping your recovery from that, obviously in line with whatever your doctor or consultant has suggested for you and your body. So tip number 7, get walking. Tip number 8, transport. So there are lots of different ways you can do this, and this will also depend if you have a car, where you live in a city, if you live in a rural area. I live in kind of like a suburb, so I have kind of the bits of both. In the car, we had car seats that were fixed, and they actually spun as well. I'll put the link for them below. I can't remember the brand, Saigo. I'll put the link in the brand below. I think it's a German-based brand, but we thought they were great car seats, and they did them till they were 3-4 years old, and they started rear facing and then they were front facing, and they pivoted and swung, which meant you could put them in the car seat straight away and then swing it into the right position, which was really helpful for me when you've got 2 babies and a shopping trolley and a dog or something else. It was just really, really helpful for me putting them in. And then we had the City Mini GT was the buggy that we had, and I'll put a link for that below as well. That was really useful for us in terms of, you know, movability. It fit in the boot of our car. It was quite big and quite clunky, but it had off-road tires. And again, like I said before, I was dog walking in parks and things like that. So it meant I could go anywhere with it. It was quite big and quite clunky, but I needed it to be like that. There are lots of other brands out there, and I would go and do your research again, like I said earlier, and find the one that suits you and what you need. Not necessarily the most expensive. That one wasn't the most expensive one. You do. The other thing I used was I carried the girls. I carried the girls in two different ways. I first used the wraps, and there are lots of YouTube tutorials about how to do her wrap. And when they started to go front and back carry, I found the wraps a little bit difficult. I did manage to find this amazing harness that was like one in the front, one in the back, and I would back to front them. I will put in pictures and I will put links to all the products below so you can find them as well. But they were really helpful for me. I like being active, I like being mobile. It meant I could have both my hands free, but both my children were attached to me, so I knew where they were at all times. When they got a bit bigger and they were walking and mobile, it's not necessarily fashionable now. It was very fashionable when I was a little girl, but reins, I had reins for them. So I would have them on reins and I would walk them about, because road safety and teaching them road safety from a very early age was so important to me. So tip number 8, transport. Tip number 9, mobility. Most likely twins are born premature, and for me it's then things like muscular development is much slower. So I was really keen to get the girls mobile quickly. And most people are aware that things like swimming are really good if you've got an injury in your physio. I come from a sport background, so I know swimming is really, really useful. So at 3 months old, I got them into swimming lessons and got them in the water. That was so much fun. It was a really good thing that we did with the girls, and that was really positive in terms of bonding with them. It's a fun activity for them. But it also meant that they were working their muscles in their legs in particular very, very strong. For them, which is really important in terms of developing crawling and walking and those abilities. Also, water awareness is a really good safety point as well, and my girls are now very, very water confident. They're not the best swimmers as yet, but they're very water confident. The other thing which they loved and we used so much was their jumperoo, and that was from about 4 months. You can go into jumperoo about 4 months. I'm sure that's the guidance on it. Again, I'll link the product below. They loved their jumperoos. They were in them so much. Again, building up muscle strength. There's lots of flashy lights and noise and sound and everything else, which is great for their development and their sensory development as well. But I just find it really good and just getting them mobile. So tip number 9 is mobility. My final tip number 10, is trust your gut. This will sound maybe a bit more wishy-washy than some of the other tips, but this is something that I learned and I have become so much more confident in since having children. I wasn't very good at trusting my own gut and trusting my own judgment prior to having kids. I definitely was, like I said before, a people pleaser, and I still am a very big people pleaser. But the big thing for me after having the girls was trusting my gut. You are their mum. You know what's right. You will know, it sounds really weird, but you will know what's right for them. Do that. Trust your gut. That is the most important thing I can say. Trust your gut. It was so important and so helpful for me. Really, really massively helpful. So tip number 10, trust your gut. Thank you so much for watching right through to the end. Really, really appreciate you watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and something somewhere there is something you can pick up and use. If you haven't already, I would ask you to like and subscribe below, because that really helps the channel and it helps me work out what's the right thing and content for you guys to make. And also, if you've got any questions, anything I've started to talk about and you want more detail on and you would like me to video on, please put it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching.